Now, British Prime Minister Theresa May is having new headaches over her Brexit deal, despite an early cabinet agreement on her plans to leave the European Union next March. Now, the Conservatives' most influential backbench Eurosceptic says that he will join Labour MPs in voting against the proposal. Jacob Rees-Mogg has also suggested other Tory Eurosceptic MPs will follow suit. Well, they accuse May of backtracking on her professed red lines in the negotiations. They say that May's Brexit plan would put the Conservatives on course for an election defeat and could split the party. Now, the deal gives the Parliament the final say on whether to follow EU rules in the future. It also urges preparations for the eventuality of a quote no-deal exit. Meanwhile, the UK's Brexit Secretary David Davis has reportedly resigned because of how the meeting to hammer out the cabinet agreement was handled. Joining me from Bristol now is investigative journalist Tony Gosling. Let's see what Tony thinks this is all about. Where is the UK heading for, in your opinion?
Well, look, this weekend, Theresa May has made a big effort to get everyone on the same page when it comes to Brexit, to final efforts to make a deal. Obviously, this deal is not going to be easy to make because every country in Europe is looking at this. The French, the Germans, the Greeks, the Spanish, the Poles. If the ordinary people were given a chance to vote in these countries, which they're not being, they may well vote, as Britain has done, to leave. So everyone is looking at this deal. The only trouble is that Theresa May's efforts have blown right back in her face, because what she's done, I mean, the whole point of this Brexit deal is to take back control of goods and services and people that are going into and out of the UK. And this deal doesn't quite do that. And this is why the various Eurosceptics, Jacob Rees-Mogg particularly, and the Conservative Party, are saying, well, actually, what you've done is you've just torn up your red lines, so we're not having it. And also, David Davis, who does all the negotiations, the Brexit Secretary with Brussels, is saying they won't accept this deal. There's no point. I mean, do you remember when David Cameron, a few years ago, went over to Brussels saying, I'm going to get a deal? He got nothing. And Davis knows that this deal that Theresa May is trying to pull together is getting nowhere. In the background to all of this, you've got Theresa May with almost zero authority as a Prime Minister, right? She called a general election last year, which was a total disaster. She nearly lost her majority. She's only managing to hang on by her fingernails. She's also had the Defence Secretary, the International Development Secretary, the Cabinet Office Minister, the Home Secretary, the Education Secretary, and now the Brexit Secretary quit on her. I wouldn't be at all surprised if there is actually now a coup in the Conservative Party and she's gotten rid of Theresa May, because the big failure down the line back in the Thatcher years was the privatisation of British industry, which meant it could be snapped up by foreigners, and they're now trying to put it all back together again. When people like BMW and Airbus, who are massively invested in Britain, have taken old British industries, say we're pulling out, this means the British share prices start to plummet. And so, yeah, she's actually, if what she should have done is to say, well, we're going to have a deal, which may be a no deal, but she can't be making these big compromises with the Europeans, especially if she's being told by people who know that they're not going to work. And so I wouldn't be surprised if even within a week, certainly within a month, we see Theresa May out, because she's just simply not got the authority. And also, of course, she was a Remainer originally. So I don't think she's got the authority to carry this Brexit deal through.
Okay, and Antonio, very briefly, could you tell us what is the right way to carry Brexit the right way?
Well, I think you have to obviously do as many negotiations as you can with the Europeans, but you have to be aware that they want Britain, in Brussels, Britain, to have a really hard time. Because if we get a decent deal like the Swiss have got, and the Norwegians have got, and the Icelandic people have got, on the outside of the EU, but still having a good, decent trade deal, every other country in Europe will start to want that too. The French, the Germans, the Greeks, the Spanish, the Polish, etc. The people will want those sorts of deals, and that really means totally the end for the EU. In fact, Brexit might mean that anyway, but she needs to have a deal which it doesn't compromise the basic retaining of sovereignty in London. That is to say, controlling goods, services and people. And this deal that she tried to fix up over the weekend is very much of a compromise, a kind of weak government, soft Brexit, which we're going to need to have some kind of hard Brexit, because that's what the people voted for. Ultimately, the people who are really in charge should be the people here in Britain, and they voted very clearly on major issues such as sovereignty and immigration to leave the EU. And that, I think, was a very sensible decision. It's just a question of whether the power elite, the big establishment in Brussels, the United States of Europe, these powerful people will let Britain leave.
All right, thank you for that. Tony Gosling, investigative journalist, joining me from Bristol.